Everything's good, man. So the last time we hooked up was quite a while back.
It was some years ago. Yep.
I think it was before the pandemic and everything kind of getting goofy and all that.
Well before the pandemic.
It was a tamer world then, I think. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, man, thank you for reaching out. I'm looking forward to getting into, melt all the guns and part two. So thank you for reaching out. I appreciate it, man.
Pleasure to connect again.
And I guess with that title, before we get into it, I want to know, kind of mentioning the pandemic, so to speak. How did you ultimately get through that time period, and how much of living through that time affected the artistic construction of this album?
Yeah. Well, it's a great question. How much of that time affected the this album? That's I kind of want to pick away at that one. I mean, I really just I mean, I write a lot of music, right? Like generally, I'm a writer. So like maybe the pandemic allowed me to kind of continue that, but I got to be honest, it was hard to write when there was nothing on the horizon. And so when this kind of came in, it was like some other things were more prepared. Like I actually had more space to be a little bit more organized. So then when the creative time in the compositional sense came around, I was kind of ready to kind of jump on it like and trust my instincts musically a little bit, a little bit more clear than in the past, I think. So like I really like was really sure of what I was writing for what I was going to be doing, and that really helped. So maybe the pandemic helped a little bit in that sense, just to kind of like delete a lot of the chaos that was everyday life before that and add new chaos. I'm not sure.
So, I think talk to me a little bit from your perspective. Talk to me a little bit about the title of this album. What are you ultimately going after to meld this with the album that you made?
Yeah, I mean, it started in 2019 when I did the first record where I have all these song titles and I have all these record titles and themes over the years and they're great, and I still stand by them. I mean, in terms of, you know, that's a very sincere output. But this one, I think in 19 there was just some, I mean, for a lot of years there's been a lot of violence and like, I grew up in Maine and, hunting and the whole thing. I know what some of these cultures are. I'm not like clueless to them. I wasn't, you know, I know what the scene is, but then to be using them in that, using firearms in this really kind of dangerous, I mean, dangerous doesn't even, that's not even the correct word. Um, to be seeing that on repeat for so many years is just, it really just made me want to, I realized that I could kind of make an artistic statement and kind of also a little bit of a political, personal kind of gripe, I guess I could say I have with this type of violence. But I mean, it's even grosser than that. I mean, you have people under 10 years old or in their teens making these decisions with firearms. It's like, that we're talking about using them as weapons in wars traditionally against like countries. It's like,
Yeah.
what is this dynamic that people are dealing with? Why is that existing? So, I mean, it definitely comes from a place of, I mean, I don't have any, other people have asked me, did I lose anybody to this type of violence? And the question is, or the answer is no. But I mean, I don't think anybody should be subjected to this. And I think there are probably some pretty simple legislative procedures and kind of political outlooks and views that could be because there are gun lovers in the NRA and the whole thing where people are saying, oh, blah, 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 and I'm not going against any of that. I'm just saying when it comes down to like having them around in schools with kids, I mean, there's some sort of disconnect of using things, properly or improperly, and this is immediately very clearly improper use of. I mean, that's mainly kind of what I'm talking about in
Yep.
terms of like in the U.S. with the gun violence, where it's like, okay, we have metal detectors in schools and stuff, but that's not really even doing anything. It's like to me, a lot of these problems are more, psychological and or just kind of community based, maybe solutions of people communicating with one another, about like what could be good or bad or legal and illegal, or, I mean, just simple logic where I, I don't want to sound completely clueless, but how is that happening and it's happening in a lot of places too. It's not just, oh, it's in this one state or in this one country. I mean, yeah, mainly in the U.S. The gun violence is pretty outrageous. But it's you can use the word epidemic, right, for gun violence. So yeah, I don't know if I answered your question, but I realized, well, why title a record this again? Well, maybe I mean it again. Maybe it does need to be said continually. Just the other week, it happened in Georgia. There was at the high school. So it's also, it's like, yeah, I mean, where's the legislation since what was the Connecticut shooting? On blanking, but
Sandy Hook.
years ago. Exactly. And where have we gone since then? It's like, okay, so if people aren't talking about these topics, then of course, nothing will happen on a kind of political local level. So I think it needs to be addressed more firmly within every community, and also taken very seriously, because I mean, people are being hurt, not just murdered or killed, but actually hurt in a lot of ways. So, that's kind of the message that I'm
Yeah.
sticking to.
No, I get it, and I
Yeah.
think it's very essential, and I think, unfortunately, I got strong feelings about this. I'm an IT technician for a school district by day, so I'm going into
Ah,
buildings all the time, and I see this firsthand. But this is the problem, and I'm going to be very blunt. I'm going to be very frank, and I think artists like you that are putting this out there is very beneficial, and I think we need to keep it going. Nothing's going to happen in this country. No one's going to do anything, and they don't care. And it's like when you see someone like Marjorie Taylor talking about it, you understand the vapidity and the absolute desecration of intelligence that goes into people that think like that. All they care
uh,
about are the fact that everybody wants to keep every single gun that they have. They can't make concessions, they can't look at
yeah,
the other side, and they don't care. And
yeah,
the thing that's the most egregious about this is that there was conspiracy theories that were floating around about that kid that did it in Sandy Hook. And then these
yeah,
parents had to get harassed. So we've taken it to different levels. It's kind of like the dog and the cats getting eaten in a town where it didn't happen. We've gotten to a place where it's like Mike Judge is writing the script for our country now. It is a
uh,
big, huge Mike Judge film. And I don't know when we're going to get out of that. But us too, and most people out there that are thinking about this, we don't care about everybody having guns. We just don't
hmm,
want automatic weapons that were designed for military grade operations to land in the laps of kids. And these
there you go.
people that don't care about it, they don't care. They just don't care. And
Yeah.
it's an emotional issue for me. And unfortunately, I think the thing, I talk to a lot of artists from Canada and they get grants from the
Mm,
government to make albums and they
uh-huh.
pass legislation to ban weapons like that. Why
Uh-huh.
can't we get to a point where we hold the arts up, give artists
Mm,
money to make albums and make simple bans on these weapons? It just seems logical, but there's so many other forces that are going into what we look at in the
mm-hmm.
political machine right now. And it really, I don't I think the only way that any of this is gonna change is if it hits home. Like, for instance, with anything like cancer or anything else, it doesn't become real until it becomes something that people have to deal with very
Right,
personally. And
right,
it's just
right.
not something that's personal for them at all.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the problem with that is there have been so many uh, incidences and like situations where actually there are a lot of groups of very affected personal like communities that are actually actively trying to combat this. I don't know if that's the right word, but you know what I'm trying to say. They are
Sure.
trying to make a difference through awareness, which this is some of the. I mean, for me, it was just a guttural feeling. It was like, whoa, this is just so wrong. Like I mean, on a fundamental human level, like this is, I mean, this is really, I mean, senseless is the key word here, but like, to be having this type of low level kind of violence, it's like, it's not even like necessarily people like, well, I don't want to get into the potential psychological reasoning behind people's choices. But that's not really, that's already too late in my opinion, where it should be coming kind of from like you're talking about in the buildings where it's education, where people need to be aware of this as a problem and topic and continually talking about it. We already said that. But like, so I started researching years ago and I was like, okay, what are those, factors? And then I think to myself, am I the type of person that actually wants to go and put myself into this legislative position where you're going around doing the petitions and you're talking to to the politicians or, people, community leaders and all these types of concepts. And that's kind of a really, a little bit of a gray line wall for me because it's like, well, I am also an artist trying to just make music and do these things. So it's like, I'm not a full-time activist or something, but this is kind of like how I feel like I can positively at least contribute and put this out there as a reminder. In the research, like I also found some really interesting websites and the National Gun Violence Awareness Day that they do every year, and I think it's June, but it kind of flips around. And then there's also like there's this guy, I forget his name, who has a Twitter account where he posts the statistics of the daily like kind of count of violent acts of violence related to gun violence, and he has a whole dedicated website, and it's really I don't want to say it's interesting, but it's really scary to see.
Yeah.
He tallies up the whole, and he's ex-military. I was chatting with him, a while ago, just like trying to figure out what's going on. And but the volume and the frequency is just, it's disturbing.
Oh
Like
yeah.
when you really see the numbers, it's very disturbing. So
I've seen that. I've seen
yeah,
that website and heard
yeah,
it referenced, and it's astonishing. Like just in
mhm,
churches and synagogues and everywhere, it's
yeah,
like
yeah.
the rate's crazy. So, how did you artistically pull this album together? How did you actually put the songs? How did you select and put them together?
Well, a lot of times, yeah. I mean, it's always interesting because I write so much music and I have like all over the years and I have all these processes of like kind of whittling down like what is it that I am, what's resonating, so for this record specifically, I think I wrote 15 pieces in about a month and a half's time, which was actually really fast. But I knew what I wanted to do, and then I kind of go through this elaborate process of kind of just editing things away that I'm feeling more connected to. And then I also have like a whole list of song titles of ideas that I'm like, oh, this is an expression that I would like. And then actually eventually I kind of just try to put them together and which ones I'm genuinely feeling the connection to. So it's like, it's not more like it isn't like a prompt like, oh, I hear like gunshots and then translating that into orchestrations or something. It's more kind of like a general feeling of like, I think this piece actually speaks in this way with kind of like this subject matter in mind. So it is very abstract, especially because I'm not writing like lyrical music. I don't this is instrumental music. But so that does leave a lot of room for people to kind of imagine in whatever way you would like with kind of the titles that I'm putting out there. But I actually like that because to me that's kind of like, you know, that's interesting to me where it's like, yeah, this title for me genuinely does relate to this music, or vice versa, goes both ways. I might have looked at some of those titles and been like, and that could have given me inspiration on the compositional level. So it is abstract, but at the same time both of those are kind of going down the track at the same time for me, especially with this project, because I knew that I wanted to do it again. I knew that Ralph was on board, and and so I just was, I wanted to. I, I'm fine. This is like maybe the second record I've done of like the same band twice. The first one was Dirigo Rataplan, and then I did Dirigo Rataplan 2, and so this is kind of the similar kind of approach, I guess, for me.
So, what are you
Yeah.
doing for live shows? What are you doing to promote the album?
Yeah, well, so there's two things. The first thing is I have like which is not this record, but I have a solo tour in a couple weeks. And actually, I would played in Kansas City um, last June, and I kind of was looking. I realized I was like, oh shoot, I forgot to reach out. But then I also was looking at the schedule, and it was like, I played in New York City, played in Rochester, played in Fayetteville, Arkansas, and then I took a bus up to Kansas City and played, and then I went like, like I don't know, West Coast or something. So I was kind of realizing, I was like, okay, I don't feel so bad. Like I'm sorry, but
Yeah.
it was going so fast. That was last June, and it was like, so, but anyway, apologies for that. But I had a great
All
time out
good.
there. That was also the first time in both of those, playing in both of those states for me. But anyway, but for this tour, it's like I have a solo tour. I'm still touring the solo record in a couple weeks, and it's all over the states. I'm excited. But this project specifically with this band, Melts All the Guns 2, we have 3 concerts in Europe, and for this year, this fall. We're playing in London on the 1st of November. We're playing at the Jazz Fest Berlin on the 2nd. And we're playing in Graz, Austria at a nice venue there. So we have like 3 release shows, which, depending on what type of music you're playing and level of artist or whatever, it's kind of hard these days. It's a lot, let me put it this way. I have 14 solo gigs in a row. It's a lot easier to get that together. And, and then, it's harder to get bands and travel with the bands. But anyway, that's the plan for this. I'm really excited about that. And also that this message that we're talking about will actually kind of get to a different size and also different kind of understanding audience. Though it's interesting that this concept, everybody also in Europe is kind of looking and they're like, oh yeah, that's like the American thing, right? Like where you guys have all the guns. So it also kind of resonates in a whole other way where
Yeah.
it's like, okay, Europe, like don't do that, like it also kind of has a little bit of a highlight like that. But they're on, I think they're kind of on top of that in a way that the US is still like, we're trying to figure out why
Yep.
this is a problem, and it's like this we shouldn't be trying to figure out why this is a problem. We should be trying to figure out how to make this not exist as a problem. I mean,
Yep.
first, amendment rights and everything, cool, but like, this is beyond that, in my opinion. So yeah.
Absolutely. So at the end of the
Yeah,
day, what are you hoping the listener gets from this album?
that's a great question. I mean, I would say, okay, I'm the artist. I'm putting out the music. I would like that they would listen to the music, but most importantly, kind of like I was talking about with the title association, where it's kind of like, okay, here's the idea, and maybe if you remember something from this music, that idea, that semi political kind of activist idea, might carry forward. And yeah, I know a lot of people aren't, these audiences, maybe I should have been playing, I don't want to say any stereotypes too hard, but the type of music, I mean, this is like, it's a little bit, maybe more avant type of music. So it's not necessarily the audience, but the statement where it's like, I want this statement to be out there. So in conclusion, I mean, I want people to be keeping this concept in mind, that this is a problem, and that maybe they talk to somebody else, maybe they share the music and they say, check this out, here's this idea. A lot of the tune titles are also kind of like very specific, also political in relation to government and the election that's coming up. A lot of it is kind of alluding to that, like, I don't know if you checked out any of the titles, but there's some activists included directly, like Audre Lorde, and also political technology, which has to do with Russian interference, basically in elections. That's kind of a hot topic since 2016, since we met, last spoke. So it's not just the guns, but it's also just the whole kind of being clear with your positions on these topics. One last thought with that. Oh, let's see. I think I just lost it, but it had to do with. I'll remember it. Sorry.
Yeah. No. You're good. So if anyone wants to pick up a physical copy, where's the best place to do that? How can they do it?
Right. So I'm a big Bandcamp supporter in general of other people's music and my music, because just very clearly that money goes right to the person that did the thing. So if we're talking about 10, 20 bucks, it's really not that much money. So if you want the money to go to those people, if you support those ideas or that music, that philosophy, whatever, then that's the best way. And also that includes, for this specifically, that includes Europe shipping prices, and also US. I have distributors only in Europe and in the States, but so the shipping can be worked out easily, because physical product these days is insane. So it's digital and physical. But anyway, yeah. So
Cool,
Yeah.
man. Well, Devin,
Yeah.
again, yeah, thank you for reaching out to the show. I'm so glad to be able to profile this on the program. So, and it's great to catch up, man. I appreciate it.
Likewise. Thank you so much. Thanks for taking the time.